Why are you good for a public office? Why would you be good in the U.S. Senate? Because I would never sell out. I've already proven that. There's not a United States senator that I could name who I think would turn down $250 million or maybe more on principle alone. I have more faith in the human spirit than that, the human intellect. Like, I'm going to talk to people the way that they deserve to be talked to, with some dignity. I'm not going to talk to people like they're stupid. People will run, they'll lose, and then they'll quit. They'll be like, oh, I'm done. Anybody who thinks that we can take one shot at these incumbents is mistaken. Or they're in it just for the money, which is another issue.
Which is a lot of people, right?
Exactly.
All right, guys, we got Royce White here today. We got a virtual episode. I thought it was an important one. You guys know I don't do virtual too often, but honored to have you, man. Thanks for joining the show.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I know you're busy right now. You got a big campaign, right?
I mean, yeah, it's an undertaking, no doubt. You know, all of the grassroots people, or the people who come from outside the machine that want to challenge these deeply entrenched incumbents like an Amy Klobuchar or Tina Smith. She's not going to run for re-election for her seat, but still, it's the Democrat seat, and it's an uphill battle. Obviously, they got more money than Midas. All of the mainstream media is pretty much still in lockstep, although that's starting to change via podcast and alternative media. But it's still a heavy lift.
Yeah, you got the money against you. You got all their connections against you, right?
Yeah, for sure.
You got
infrastructure too. I mean, the biggest thing that I've learned so far is, one, a lot of candidates will run a race and then they'll lose on the first go around just because of name recognition. Everybody, you may think you're popular. Let's even say you were an ex-athlete, or you were a high-powered attorney, or whatever, wherever you came from. People may know you, but do people know you across an entire state of 4 million voters? I mean, that's a big difference. And there's a lot of people who aren't as tuned in to the wavelength and mainstream media as we would even think. And so, people will run, they'll lose, and then they'll quit. They'll be like, oh, I'm done. Anybody who thinks that we can take one shot at these incumbents, especially in these deep blue states like a Minnesota, California, New York, or what have you, is mistaken, or they're in it just for the money, which is another issue, right?
which is a lot of people, right?
Exactly.
What are the most pressing issues in Minnesota you're most passionate about that you want to fix right now?
Well, I think people have to view United States Senate races as national races, every single one, because 100 U.S. senators decide the legislation and laws in this country. So I don't really talk about Minnesota issues. I think global issues affect the local and vice versa.
Mm.
Minnesota, no different. Minnesota's unique in that we have a very concentrated per capita Fortune 500 business community, right? You got Cargill and General Mills and Medtronic and 3M and Ecolab and all these global companies, and then you have a very significant agriculture business as well. Minnesota is one of the biggest ag producers in the country, and because of that, it doesn't get more uniparty than Minnesota, right? It's if it's not the corporate world, then it's big ag and the farm bills and the subsidies, and how big corporations, for lack of a better term, are squeezing out the farmers in rural America the same way they are putting black people on the payroll, the welfare state down in the inner cities. I mean, it's kind of the same problem, except for they're actually slaving the farmers out for their deal. And in the inner cities, they're just putting black people on the payroll for no work. So Minnesota's unique. And the reason I say Minnesota's unique is because we have one metropolitan area, the Twin Cities, and everything else is either lake country and cabins or agriculture and farming. So you got that contrast. And because of the contrast, you would think, well, hey, when you go to outstate Minnesota, you got to be heavy Republican, right? You got to be heavy MAGA. You got to be heavy America First. But that's not the case. I flipped 29 counties in 2024,
Wow.
which was a big deal, right? I mean, 29 counties is an incredible feat, especially having the entire establishment against you on both sides of the aisle, not having a lot of money, and having all of the the hit pieces against you that say you're a conspiracy theorist. Hopefully we'll talk about some of those here. But we flipped 29 counties, yet still in outstate Minnesota, it was 65-35, which means there were still people in outstate Minnesota that voted for Amy Klobuchar, even though they were Republican counties. So we got our work cut out for us. Let's say that.
Yeah. What was the fundraising difference in that battle with her?
Oh, I mean, there was no. I mean, we raised like $1.5 million. I think she had $16 million on hand, if I'm not
Wow.
mistaken, or maybe she had $10 million on hand. She has raised over $16 million. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, Amy Klobuchar came into the U.S. Senate, and she was worth her net worth was a couple hundred thousand or something along those lines. And rumor is that she's worth upwards of 30 to $40 million now after 3 terms. So, same problem we've been seeing across the Congress and the Senate nationwide is true here in Minnesota too.
That's insane. Do you think it should be more of an even playing field when it comes to raising money?
Well, I mean, I'm just patently against and categorically against special interests and lobbies altogether. I mean, I didn't even really try and pursue any lobby money. I'm not sure if any PACs or lobbies donated to my campaign. I would assume that most of them didn't.
Mhm.
I know the big ones didn't, right? I mean, the APACs of the world stay away from me like I'm the Black Plague. But it's hard to say, because in one sense you do want corporations and individuals to be able to spend their money how they want to. However, we see in America that it's gotten so lopsided and corrupt that essentially the big corporations are tipping the scales, and part of that's on the people. I mean, I can say that the Googles and Facebooks and big tech and some of the other globalist, multinational corporations are leaning one way and trying to tip the media or the voters or the unions. But at the end of the day, it is incumbent upon the people as well. And I point out Christians specifically because it's estimated that nearly 30 million Christians who were of voting age didn't vote even in the 2024 election. I mean,
Wow.
with all the chips up on the bar and Satan is taking over your country, and they have taken over satanic pedophiles, by the way. If we know when Satan is taking over your country and you don't feel that it's important to get involved in elections, I mean, hey, what can I say to you? I'm just going to keep telling the truth, and hopefully the people will come around.
Yeah. Well, to defend them, I know I agree with you, by the way, but the 2020 election, I think a lot of people lost trust in the voting system. And I did see you talk
Yeah.
on Stephen A. Smith's podcast about some voting issues in Minnesota with the machines too, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, number one, and I agree with you as well. And I understand people who are disaffected with the process. However, statistically speaking, at least from what they say, and it's they, I say that in air quotes, because what information can we believe anymore, right?
Right.
I mean, I'm not going around canvassing the entire state of Minnesota or the whole country. I don't think anybody is even capable of doing something like that. But from what they say, the lack of participation in the Christian sort of Protestant evangelical community extends well back beyond the 2020 election. So, if nothing else, the 2020 election certainly made those people, discouraged by the process as well as others. And yeah, I mean, the machine should be gone already. If there's one message that I could get to Donald Trump, to the president is, what are we waiting on with these machines? I mean, this is a matter of national security through and through. And it's not just me saying it, although all the mainstream media outlets will go up. There's that conspiracy theory
Yeah.
stuff again. Amy Klobuchar and Kamala Harris were both on the record in 2018. I think Kamala Harris even held a demonstration before a senatorial committee to prove that the machines could in fact be hacked. At that time, they were trying to convince us that Russia had hacked the machines in 2020, which we now know was a deep state, deep fake, coup attempt.
Mhm.
But the fact still remains that they did demonstrate that the machines can be hacked, right?
Yep.
So, and just in general, people got to understand the technology in the machines are considered proprietary technology. And in order to really forensic audit whether or not any hacking goes on, you have to get past that intellectual property law and things like that, which courts have not even really tried to challenge. And it's the case. I mean, it is a fact that your average slot machine at a local casino has a better chain of custody than your average voting machine, which is unacceptable in my opinion. So
That's insane being in Vegas. That's just
yeah,
insane. Holy crap.
yeah, yeah.
Do you think mail-in ballots should be banned too?
I'm leaning that way. Yeah, I mean, and I understand. You got people in rural Minnesota that it's a long way for them to, like Minnesota, for example. It's a long way for people to drive from rural Minnesota to come and turn their ballot in. But I gotta say, if you don't care about your citizenship enough to take the time out to make the drive and secure the process, then you deserve to die under communism. And by God, you will. You know, our founding fathers were brilliant when they said, you get the government you deserve, and by God, you will. So mail-in ballots are, you know, have been a problem. We've seen the problem with them. We've seen the problem with ballot harvesting, especially here in Minnesota, especially in a place like Minneapolis. So I would say that if, you know, if all things were my way, yeah, we'd get rid of the mail-in ballots too.
Mm. Going back to the conspiracy theorist label you said earlier, what were they trying to hit you with those?
Oh, anti-Semitism.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, of course. And it's funny because, you know, my daughter has a Hebrew name. I'm a Catholic. I'm a Christian, but even the Catholics are considered a little closer to um, Judaism than, let's say, the Protestants, right? Because of just the history, right? That's why the Pope wears the yarmulke, right?
Mm.
You know, it's you know, some of my best friends are Jewish, and some of them have very big disagreements and concerns about the way the Jewish identity is being used and has been used for a long time. And I feel uh, I feel somewhat entitled, if I may say so myself. I hate to use the word entitled, but I feel entitled to speak out against the way that the Jewish identity is used because the Black identity is used the exact same way. You know, the Black identity is used to justify the expansion of the federal government, the infinite expansion of the federal government here in America, right? If we don't expand the federal government, then white supremacists are going to kill you, right? That's what
Right.
they sell in Black communities, right? The government has to get as big as, you know, humanly possible, or else those KKK white supremacists are going to surely come kill you. Forget your Second Amendment rights. But the Jewish identity is used to justify the expansion of global government, or what people would call a one world government, which we essentially already live under, with a few caveats along the margins. So, you know, many of my Jewish friends, my co-host, Professor Penn, we have a podcast together we do called Hebrews. Hebrews and Negroes is what the name stands for. And yeah, I mean, we talk about the entire Black and Jewish narrative all the time. So it was just strange to have, for example, when I first ran in 2022, I tried to run against Ilhan Omar, the Republican establishment here in Minnesota.
Mm.
You know, got my way then, and I lost an endorsement by about 30 votes. You know, some of these congressional district endorsements are like 200 people tops.
Yeah.
And so I lost that by about 30 to 40 votes. And then I lost a primary by about 900 votes in a Minneapolis primary where only 10,000 Republicans even voted in the primary, which is, you know, a Greek tragedy in and of itself. And when I started that campaign, I launched my campaign outside the Federal Reserve, and they asked me a question about my campaign in terms of what the focus was. And I said, I want to fight against globalism. And in the Star Tribune, this is the newspaper of record in Minneapolis, the Star Tribune said that the word globalism is a dog whistle for anti-Semitism.
Mm.
And I'm going, whoa, what are you guys, what? I mean, I didn't mean that at all. Honestly, I really wasn't even thinking about, you know, the Jewish influence although it's a problem. When I said globalism, I wasn't specifically talking about the Jews. I'm talking about everybody who's invested in the globalist agenda, whether it be Barack Obama. Certainly he's not Jewish. Ilhan Omar, she's definitely not Jewish. You know, it's the Chinese, I mean, the Europeans, the French, the Austrian, everybody. So, you know, but it was just an example to me that the Jewish identity was going to be used as a cudgel to discredit me. And I've just leaned right into that and said, bring it on. I mean, I don't give a fuck, really.
I think it probably worked years ago, but now people are waking up, right?
Yeah, well, you'd be surprised how much it still works. I think it's definitely starting to change. You know, when you see a guy like Steve Bannon, who is a mentor of mine, he's really my mentor
Mm.
in politics, which I'm grateful for, deeply honored. He's one of the brightest political minds that we have in the world today, maybe, you know, of the last 100 years. You talk about Donald Trump, somebody who they marshaled all their resources against to keep from getting reelected, and yet Bannon was able to help articulate a message to the people and a brand to the people that still overcame the powers that be. He's an American hero. But anyway, when a person like Bannon is now starting to question our relationship with Israel, who has always been a very, very pro-Israel commentator and supporter, we're starting to have movement. But the evangelical community is still a very powerful voting base, and I still think that they're caught up in the woo-woo and the propaganda. So we'll have to see how that all shakes out.
What have been the biggest lessons being around Bannon? What have you taken away being around him?
Man, I mean, I couldn't walk a mile in the shoes. A man went to prison, federal prison at 75, 70 years old, 65 years old, for the country, on principle. So, I mean, he's in a class of his own in many regards, and it's more that we just watch and admire rather than, I can't really model myself after him because I'm not in his position. But when we talk, he's always been supportive of me. And one thing I appreciate about him, and maybe this more than anything, it's easy to pander to the echo chambers, right? When you're in it for yourself, for your own gain, whether that be as a podcaster or a radio show host, or you have political ambitions to get in office, or you're selling a product, whatever the case may be, maybe a combination of all three. It's easy to pander to echo chambers. He doesn't do that. And he's still been able to have one of the most successful shows and one of the most impactful shows in the world. For example, a lot of right-wing commentators play the pro wrestling politics, right? WWE shit. And it always comes down to race, right? It's a pit black versus white. You make off with the green. That's the go-to move, not only for the establishment, but for the commentators who are trying to, make money off of the deal. But Bannon's been one from the very beginning that's like, no, the MAGA movement has to embrace and prioritize the working class blacks and Hispanics if we're going to save this republic. And the working class Hispanics definitely delivered Donald Trump a victory. And we saw huge movement in the polls with blacks for the first time. And I think the polls were probably wrong. And I still think the vote count is wrong in many of those deep blue inner cities where I don't know if those black people are voting, number one, or if they're voting Democrat. Certainly the conversation that we're seeing online is more split 50-50. You have a huge black MAGA support now that you didn't really see even back in 2020. So Bannon is the tip of the spear for that change in American politics. And, I respect him deeply for sticking his neck out there and just going for the truth 100%.
Yeah, shout out to Bannon. He was the first one I saw call out Elon, to be honest, before even him and Trump went at it.
Yeah, man. I mean, Bannon, we've been calling out Elon for years, though. I mean, the problem with Elon, and see, there's two sort of competing narratives here. One is the left got way out of control, and they did. Of course, we all saw it. It's like I was on the show with David Pakman, and he openly says, he openly says, there's nothing wrong with bringing little kids to drag stripper shows. It's like, okay, that's a non-starter, but it became the party line, and so the Elon Musk of the world stepped up and they said, hey, that's crazy. Can we get back to some type of sanity? Now, their sanity happens, or his sanity specifically, or the tech bro sanity happens to be something like everything was going well. People were getting money, business and industry was growing. We were on our way to technology and transhumanism. Why did you guys want to mess it up with all of these, identity politics and trans woo-woo? And I agree with them. The trans thing was way off the railroad tracks, but AI isn't any less off the railroad tracks.
Yeah.
Transhumanism isn't any less off the railroad tracks. In fact, you can make an argument that transgenderism is the predicate for transhumanism. That's a much deeper, cultural and sociological discussion. But yeah, I'm completely distrusting of Elon Musk because of his affinity for technology and AI and the whole transhuman idea. We don't want to be growing organic human babies in labs that don't have any human rights because they belong to corporations. That's just that's what they would call an infomnia.
Yeah, that's some Terminator shit right there.
Yeah, that's freaky. That's freaky.
No souls in those bodies,
And even, I'm not just talking about robots, I'm not talking about cyborgs, like Terminator. I'm talking like they're actually trying to grow organic babies from petri dish and cell to life and birth. And it's just like, we know that those people are going to become weapons, or they're going to become slaves, or they're going to become, sex objects, right? I mean, is anybody even you know, uncertain about that? I mean, it's almost, it's, of course, that's what they're going to do with organic people that have no, rights, because they're not technically citizens, they're property. I mean, we fought an entire civil war so that people weren't considered property. Now we've come to the technological point or evolution where we're going to create. It's just like, guys, come on, stop.
Shout out to today's sponsor, Quince. As the weather cools, I'm swapping in the pieces that actually gets the job done, that are warm, durable, and built to last. Quince delivers every time with wardrobe staples that'll carry you through the season. They have fall staples that you'll actually want to wear, like the 100% Mongolian cashmere for just $60. They also got classic fit denim and real leather and wool outerwear that looks sharp and holds up. By partnering directly with ethical factories and top artisans, Quince cuts out the middleman to deliver premium quality at half the cost of similar brands. They've really become a go-to across the board. You guys know how I love linen and how I've talked about it on previous episodes. I picked up some linen pants and they feel incredible. The quality is definitely noticeable compared to other brands. Layer up this fall with pieces that feel as good as they look. Go to quince.com/DSH for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. They're also available in Canada too.
And Elon, he won't back off of it. Like the HB1 visas, people don't understand what Bannon was saying is completely right on the visa issue. We need people from India who have these skills, and they're the only ones who can do these jobs. Same argument the Republicans have always made about, legal immigration. Oh, we need legal immigration. No, we need a moratorium on immigration altogether until we can get a head count of how many people we actually let in this country. And get the border completely secure. Now, Donald Trump did do a fantastic job of getting the border secure really quick. But, if you're illegal, especially if you came under the Biden administration these last 4 years, your ass is going back. Bottom line, I don't care about the sob story. You can post a video on Instagram with the sad music behind it and say, I just want to be okay. But you're going back. And the bottom line is, if you don't have a border, you don't have a country. And there are no business exceptions, right? I mean, I think that's kind of Elon's deal, is like, well, it's good for business. Well, the business of globalists, for sure. Yeah, that's the globalist model. But it's definitely taking jobs away from Americans. And to think that Americans just don't have the aptitude to do those jobs is categorically dishonest. Like, come on, stop it. You could teach a person to do almost anything. Humans are fascinating in that way.
Yeah, Newsom's fighting back on this. You've been seeing him and Trump go at it. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think, I saw Gavin Newsom do an interview with the guy. What's the British guy who does the podcast?
Piers Morgan.
No, not Pierce. It's the young guy. He's got a British accent. Colored guy.
Stephen Bartlett.
Okay, yeah, I don't know who he is, but anyway, he was crossing his legs under the desk during the interview. And just seriously, I mean, honestly, we just need a return to some real genuine masculine leadership. And Gavin Newsom can never redeem himself, in my opinion, because the greatest existential threat to American life, American freedom, or let's say Western values, human rights, right, as a sort of baseline and standard, is the CCP in China, right? And for him to clean the streets to welcome President Xi, who is one of the most ruthless authoritarian dictators in human history, is absolutely unacceptable, and a real indictment of his character at a deep, deep level. So, Gavin can say what he wants. He can try and go more America first, working class for his presidential run in 2028. He better damn well hope that he doesn't have to run up against me in 2028, because there is no way that shit's gonna. It's China, man. I mean, come on. What are we talking about? You don't believe in human rights. The Chinese everybody forgets that they rounded up 2 million Chinese Muslims and threw them in concentration camps just because they were Muslim. And, you know, it's like, well, but don't send the El Salvadorians back to El Salvador, and we're going to welcome Xi to California and, you know, roll out the red carpet. It's like, they must think we're stupid, but they do think we're stupid. I mean, that's the common denominator of American politics and the mainstream media is they actually do think you're stupid. In fact, when I ran my first campaign, they told me in my campaign that the experts and consultants said, don't talk above the level of a fifth grader because people don't understand. And some of that's true. I mean, we are, you know, severely undereducated in this country, over-credentialized, undereducated, over-accredited, undereducated. But you know, I have more faith in the human spirit than that, the human intellect. Like, I'm going to talk to people the way that, you know, that they deserve to be talked to with some dignity. I'm not going to talk to people like they're stupid.
Yeah.
But the establishment does believe we're stupid. So,
I mean, I think in the past, there's some truth to it. Everyone was pretty brainwashed by the media and the news, right?
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
But now with alternative media, people are waking up. They're realizing there's actual facts, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Crazy times we're in, dude.
Yeah, no doubt.
Conspiracy theorist. I still can't believe that for being anti-Semitic, huh?
Well, no, it's not just that. It's the election too, right? That I'm an election denier, or, you know, things like, what was another one? You know, I talked about direct energy weapons when Maui situation went on, and just things like that. Like, I spent a lot of time in the big three, and every weekend I would write something different on the side of my head, or I would wear, you know, a T-shirt out, you know, the tunnel at the beginning of the game that had a different topic on it, whether it was the Uyghurs or Epstein or Julian Assange or Muammar Gaddafi, the Federal Reserve. So any you know, gain of function research, right? I mean, so all of those things were considered conspiracy theories a short time ago. Now they're considered a conspiracy fact. And, you know, in what makes it crazy is my Wikipedia actually had that as the first line for a long time. The first line was Royce White is an American conspiracy theorist. I'm like, this is the best campaign material. This should be the best campaign material I could possibly get. If they say I'm a conspiracy theorist as the qualifier, you should vote for me, in my opinion. But, you know, we'll let the American people decide.
I think these days it's a compliment, man, to be honest.
Yeah.
You still playing playing any hoops, or are you done?
No, I'm still playing, man. I'm 34. You know, I'm in my, well, a little bit outside my prime, but still able to get up and down. And, you know, I got young body, young miles. I didn't really play as much in the NBA as I should have. But, you know, when I get a chance to play, I play. The Big Three's been good to me the last 5 seasons. I was an all-star 3 seasons out of my 5 that I played.
Nice.
And this year I didn't get a chance to play. I really wanted to focus on the campaign, and my son's 14 now, so his AAU team I coach, and I spend a lot of time with my alma mater, you know, the high school guys, and it's just so much happening here at home, right? I got business things happening. The show, I do Real America's Voice every Saturday morning, so being gone every weekend definitely, you know, is a tax on me right now. But I'll play again. I'm more interested in MMA, really, you know, getting back in the octagon and doing some pro fighting. I love MMA, man. I love the fight game. I love jiu-jitsu. I love the whole martial arts world. And there's no real timeline on that for me. I'm still relatively young when it comes to the MMA world. Well, I know we see John Jones, he's retiring right now in his mid-30s, but we got people who are just getting going in their early 30s. So the MMA world is cool like that, where, you know, guys are can go a little bit longer and a little bit older if they have the skill and determination.
Yeah. Hey, they just announced fights at the White House, man. If you get a call from Trump, you might have to take it.
That would be the highlight of my young life, to get a fight there. Maybe they can put me against another politician. That'd be fun.
I don't know who on the left would ever take that fight, to be honest.
Yeah, we had to find somebody who's big enough. Probably, I may have to take 2 of them, you know, maybe 2 or 3. Maybe Fetterman. Fetterman seems like he's a bigger guy, but he's not in good shape. Plus, he had some health issues. I wouldn't like beating up on Fetterman. I'll take. I can't say Crenshaw. If Crenshaw had 2 eyes, I'd fight him. But, you know, he's a neocon scumbag too. But, you know, you can't talk about him because he's disabled and a veteran. But, you know, that's part of my brand, is I just tell it like it is. So.
Respect. I think at least people know where you're at rather than guess, which most politicians are guessing where they're at.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
who do you think the GOAT is of the MMA world, of the UFC?
I mean, there's a lot of them that you would forget about, like Fedor, right?
Mm.
Fedor was a monster. You know, you definitely got to have John Jones in the conversation.
Yep.
And people talk about the PEDs and if that tarnishes the legacy. And, you know, in some sense, maybe it does. I know there are a lot of people that were taking enhancement drugs, you know, throughout the eras as well. So it's hard for me to pin down and sort of track and just, you know, kind of, you know, distinguish who is qualified to be in the GOAT discussion. Did you win or didn't you win? You know, George St. Pierre, obviously, Mighty Mouse, yeah, he's got to be up in the conversation. I think Conor McGregor definitely changed the MMA world for the better.
Mm.
You know, MMA was certainly not what it was before Conor McGregor showed up. And he was a damn good fighter himself. He got rich, $100 million, and had a lot of controversy and things go on. But people who really watch MMA and know Prime Conor watched something that was amazing. I'll never forget, the 5-second knockout against Jose Aldo when Jose was, I mean, a world beater himself, and he
Yep.
was a pound for pound top three himself and hadn't been defeated. And Connor just, sparked him in the first 5 seconds, exactly how he predicted he was going to spark him too, which is even crazier at that level. So there's a lot of greats. I mean, Khabib, you got to put Khabib up there. He still remains undefeated.
Mm.
And I think this young kid, Ilya, is going to probably end up. And just look at his movement and his work ethic and his confidence and his striking. It seems like he's probably going to end up being in that all-time discussion as well. You got so many good ones though, man. Like Kamaru Usman had a great run, and then Adesanya had a great run, and of course, what's Alex Pereira has had a crazy short run. I
Yep.
mean, for him to just jump in and then win 2 titles and 2 divisions. I mean, there's so many good. The MMA world is at an all-time high, and I hope I can kind of break in there and have some success myself. So
let's get it. You still watch NBA at all, or they chucking too
yeah.
many threes?
No. I mean, I watched the NBA. As it's unfortunate what went down between me and the NBA. I was kind of ahead of my time saying that mental health is one of the greatest issues we face. Now we see, young and middle-aged white liberal women as crazy and insane as we could possibly imagine. And it's not just them. I think the whole world is kind of suffering from a psychosis of sorts that we're making worse with the internet for sure. But at the end of the day, the game of basketball is the greatest game there is. The greatest team sport. I tell people the reason why there's 2 games that are very similar, team sports, basketball and hockey. And the reason why is because all of the players that are on the field of play are in motion at all times. They're all involved in the play, right? In other sports like soccer, you get the bat guys who are kind of not involved at times. In baseball, you get guys who are kind of not involved at times. In football, you got start, stop, and there are guys who are kind of not involved at times. Like once the ball gets past the lineman, you don't usually see the lineman chasing and getting involved in that play. In basketball, everything is happening at once, and all 5 guys have to be a part of it. So it makes those athletes very dynamic and athletic and perceptive. So basketball is at such a high level, man. I watch it and I'm like, wow. I mean, just how good, the 13th guy is, and just how good the two-way guys are that are, in the G League. I'm like, and some of these guys, the skill level and the talent is really evolving, and a lot of that is due to the commercialization of the game and how global the game became. The downside to it is, when again, it's kind of a microcosm of globalism writ large. Is like it comes at a price, and some of the price you see with the NBA is like they had to pander to the woke ideology. They couldn't kind of keep a moral center.
Yep.
Because of all of their corporate relationships or maybe their special interests, their cultural, the cultural demographic of the NBA ownership and things like that. And then you got, it starts to hurt the game as well, right? Because you got all these questions now about load management and, should guys be resting or should they be playing? Should the season be short or should we be shooting 53s a game? And why are the defensive calls so soft? And so, everything's a give and take, and hopefully some of those things iron themselves out as the game continues to grow. But I watch a lot of NBA, man, because the players and the coaching and the strategy and the schemes have never been better, in my opinion.
Facts. You said mental health is one of the greatest issues we face. Do you still feel that way to this day?
Oh man, even more so today. I think I've been greatly vindicated when I told the NBA, "Hey, we need a mental health policy." Well, let me tell you the backstory briefly about the NBA. When I came into the NBA, I was one of the first players to openly discuss my struggles with anxiety, just panic attacks. And
Yeah.
I had a panic attack when I was like 16 from smoking marijuana the first time, and for some reason I had a really bad reaction, and I would have like 3-4 panic attacks a day for like
Damn.
4 or 5 months. Yeah, it was bad until I learned what anxiety and panic attacks were. Then I was on medication, SSRIs like Prozac, and eventually I ended up getting off of it. And, so I went through a journey right there between 16 and 18, learning about anxiety and panic attacks and things. Then I went to college and went to the University of Minnesota, got in a little trouble, transferred to Iowa State, had to sit a year. This was before you could pick up and just go to whatever college you wanted penalty free.
Yeah.
Right. This was well before the portal and NIL. When I was coming through college just 10 short years ago, kids were still getting suspended half a season for getting a sweater from a college coach.
Wow.
Right.
That's crazy.
Now guys are getting $600,000 and, third, fourth best guy. So it's kind of crazy how fast things change. But I sat a year at Iowa State. Then my first year I played, I ended up being good enough to get drafted. And when I went into the draft, my story was one of the biggest stories of that draft. This was the year that Anthony Davis went number 1. And I was considered a top 5 talent and NBA ready as well, not potential or upside, but like this guy's versatile all around. They called me like one of my nicknames like the Swiss Army knife because I did a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
I led my team in points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. So I was the only player in the country to lead my team in all 5 major stat categories. Wow. And so, I was versatile and I was big, strong, NBA ready, and I played a high IQ game. And I was very unselfish, pass first guy, and tough, gritty. So people said I was ready to play right away, which kind of boosts you up that mock draft status. But there were questions and concerns about my anxiety. Like, is anxiety a character issue or a medical issue? Well, those are questions that the NBA owners and GMs had to kind of sort through that year. And the media was very interested in this. Like, well, how do people view mental health now in the NBA, but in society? So my story became like a microcosm of the mental health conversation in society. And when I got drafted, I had a dispute with the NBA about policy. And for example, like they have a banned substance list. On the banned substance list was a anti-anxiety medication that I was prescribed, Xanax. Yeah. Xanax, very, very popular anti-anxiety medication, one of the most prescribed in the world.
Yeah, I used to be on it.
Yeah, a lot of people, right? Jordan Peterson had a problem, had trouble with benzodiazepines. And benzodiazepines is a class of the drug, right? Xanax, Valium, Klonopin, Ativan, right? So anyway, so I went to the NBA and I'm like, okay, you got this banned substance list. I'm prescribed this drug. What's up here? How are we doing this? And they were like, well, no, it's fine. You're prescribed by a doctor. This is a drug for people who are taking it illicitly, like they're getting off the street. And I'm like, no, I understand that. But I'm asking, how do you guys view me being on this drug? Is this considered a liability, to the NBA community, or are organizations well-versed on this drug and the use of this drug and the dangers and pitfalls of this drug and so on and so forth? And they were like, yeah, we never had anybody ask that question, dude. Just play some basketball, man. We don't know why you're even, asking. And I'm like, well, it's one of the most dangerous drugs in the world. As a matter of fact, it's one of the few drugs where withdrawals kill the user.
I almost died from it, honestly.
Yeah,
from the withdrawal.
Yeah, man, I was sick. I got benzo sick too one time, real bad. Luckily, I ran into a doctor who had helped some veterans with PTSD. And for anybody out there who's on benzos, a great alternative is Visceral, which is like the prescription version of Benadryl.
Mm.
Now you got to be careful with the Visceral, because if you take it too often, then it'll, just like Benadryl, it'll raise your blood pressure. But I was able to get off of Xanax and then Klonopin with Visceral. So, but anyway, so these are the type of conversations that the NBA didn't even know about. They were just telling me, hey, if you're anxious about flying, which I used to get really anxious about flying, which we can talk about, and I think in retrospect is warranted. That's another one of those conspiracy theories we'll touch on. But if you get anxious about flying, just take the Xanax. And I'm like, well, guys, it's 100 flights a year. You want me to be taking Xanax? I mean, that doctors would tell you, you should only take Xanax on a very temporary basis to deal with anxiety symptoms. Anything more than probably, 4 to 6 weeks is pushing it. You start getting into the realm of interdosal withdrawals, which means that you're having withdrawals on the schedule that the doctor's telling you to take the medicine. And so I said, the alternative is just let me drive when I can drive. If we're going from Minneapolis to Chicago, just let me fucking drive. And everybody was like, well, yeah, that seems like a problem. And I'm like, why? I mean, 40 years ago, the NBA players only drove the games. You weren't flying everybody first class when Dr. J was stomping around. So like, it's, people still drive places. It's okay. And they were like, nah. And it became a power trip. And what they used was the fans' lack of awareness and lack of interest in the nuance of that story. And what are the fans going to say? Everybody would love to play in the NBA. I mean, it's one of the most sought after type of celebrity job positions that every young boy would love to play professional sports, let alone the NBA.
Yep.
And so your average American citizen that looked at the story was like, dude, just fucking get on the plane. Why are you afraid to fly? Like, that's stupid, especially for millions of dollars. And I probably could have made hundreds of millions of dollars, but it was on principle that the NBA is a watering hole for a global corporate community, and they really are. And that their neglect of having any mental health conversation, language whatsoever in their collective bargaining agreement was a sign that they just didn't really give a shit. You can talk NBA cares and all of this, fancy propaganda, but they are a great example of the rest of the media establishment that talks about caring for people, but then they got, Pfizer selling products that they know aren't safe, and they all, close their mouth and turn a blind eye for their own benefit and profit. So, I had to take a stand there, and I ended up essentially getting blackballed for that, to the point where I didn't even get invited to training camp. And it wasn't because I can't be at training. I mean, every year there are still guys who are like 37 who are invited to training camp just to be at training camp because they need extra bodies at training camp, let alone a 22-year-old who was a top 5 talent and very versatile and had a game that was perfect for where the game was progressing. You talk about positionless basketball. My game was that before it was really popular. So I was essentially blackballed, and I was told I was going to be blackballed. Like, I was sat in a back room with the powers that be and told, hey, listen, you think mental health is important? We agree. And you could be the spokesperson for mental health. You could be anything you want to be. You could be as big as you want to be. We could help you, but you got to play first. And if you don't play, who's going to listen? Well, you don't tell a young black man who comes from a working class blue collar community, if you don't sell out, then what good are you going to be to humanity? Because I just took that as a challenge, and it's like, okay, I told David Stern, the late David Stern, and he did a lot for the game, but I told him I'm going to outlive you, and I did outlive him. And now he was 70 plus years old, and I was 20, so it wasn't hard to figure that one. But and the point I was making to him is, you guys can keep the money. And that really was the basis of, like, people say, why are you good for public office? Like, why would you be good in the U.S. Senate? Because I would never sell out. I've already proven that. There's not a United States senator that I could name who I think would turn down $250 million or maybe more on principle alone. In fact, the conventional wisdom in our American political culture is take the money first, then do the moral and good thing later. Right. And it's just like, that's how the country got fucked up. So As far as my plane anxiety goes, I was just talking to somebody the other day, and it's funny. I kind of trace it back to when I was in fourth and fifth grade. It's the first time that I ever really got on a plane to go to a national basketball tournament. They used to have it down in Orlando at the Disney complex every year.
Mm.
And I remember not liking it then, but again, I'm only 8, 9 years old, so it wasn't that big of a deal.
Mm.
But when I was in the sixth grade, 9/11 happened.
Mm.
And my mom always tells a story of me taking 9/11 way different than my other cousins in the family and the other students in the class. Like, my teacher called home that day, and I was very concerned, like deeply disturbed by what was going on. It wasn't just like, oh my God, planes are hitting buildings. Yeah, oh, what's going to happen? It was like, no, something ain't right here. This doesn't seem right. And at a young age, I was already very, into history and you could say politics. And my mom was, a single mother, and she did a great job of putting a lot of books in my house.
Mm.
As many books as she did toys. And so I understood how the world worked at a young age, right? Like I was thinking about world shit at a young age.
Yeah.
As weird as that may sound or crazy as that may be, might have been bad for me. But in retrospect, I say that all to say, in retrospect, 9/11 is a huge question still. And that's one of those conspiracy theories, right?
Yep.
It's like, what the hell went on there? And when I see a Republican congressman, Kurt Weldon, go on Tucker Carlson and say the whole 9/11 story is a lie, I'm just like, holy shit. It makes sense that every time I go to the airport, first of all, I don't like heights, which is, just that's. And then the other day I was on Instagram and I saw one of the Carnival Tilt-A-Whirl rides snapped in half.
I saw that one. Saudi Arabia.
I'm like,
yeah.
Yep, see, and for me, I'm not in that big of a rush, and I'm not in that much need of a thrill to get on a Carnival Tilt-A-Whirl. I just don't need to. I mean, I love a good meal. I love good company. I love a beautiful woman. And I love a good fist fight or a good knock or a good competition. And these are a great song, a great live performance, a great musician, an artist, a craftsman. I don't need the thrills. I don't need the adrenaline. I already got problems with adrenaline, having anxiety. I don't need more adrenaline, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just like, I don't like heights, but every time I go to the airport, there's this little voice that says the whole way this shit works ain't right. And increasingly, we see problems with the FAA, but there's still big questions about 9/11. And my whole thing with flying is just like, if I'm going to die, right, let's just say I got to choose. And tomorrow's like, okay, dude, you're going to die. The very last way I would want to die is in a fuselage with 200 other terrified souls screaming in horror in the last 5 minutes of our lives as we hurl into the ocean or into the ground. That just doesn't seem like. I'd rather get shot in the head. Like,
Yeah.
I'd rather get tied up and tortured. Like, seriously. I mean, there's just no part of me that would ever want. So again, if I have to fly, of course I will. No problem. I can do it. I don't like it, but I just love driving across the country. The last 3 years with the big three, I've driven across the country so much, and I've got to see real people.
Mm.
And isn't flying like, people don't even think of it this way. Isn't flying like a sort of a detachment, a kind of a detachment from that human interaction, that reality, They call it flyover country, and people are like, who lives there? I drove through that. I know people. I see where they live. You know what I mean? So it's just like, we're becoming increasingly detached from one another, and flying is an example, and the internet is becoming an example. And it's like sports, man. Sports is one of the last real places that young people have to physically come to participate and interact with one another. And that's why it's super, super important that our community leaders really, really prioritize sports for these young people and trying to have a good influence on them there, because we're going completely digital. Like I said, I mean, I look up and I see a post where they got flesh robots and the mouth and the tongue move. It's like, it's just going to be a sex robot, guys. we know what's going to happen. We know where this is going, but it's going to start to warp things, and sports might again, sports. It's ironic. The reason I say it is ironic that my story is what it is, and I came from where I came from, being an athlete, and now we've progressed to this place where sports is like the last bastion of reality. But I still have to talk about things like, hey, we don't have to fly all across the country. I mean, I know the NBA does it every single day, but you could still drive from Minneapolis to Chicago. It's like a 5-hour drive. It's quite interesting, actually.
Yeah. I mean, flying's never a pleasant experience, man, if we're being honest.
I mean, there's always a kid crying, at least when I'm on the plane. Every single time, and I love the kids, but there's always a kid crying, or there's always somebody who, needs 2 seats and they're right next to you.
Up.
And TSA is always super rude. And, they're acting like they have to be super rude because there could be another 9/11. It's like, that was 30 years ago. And I'm not so sure it was, was what they said it was anyway. So
Look at everything that stemmed from 9/11, all the wars that were started, all the laws that were introduced. It's crazy, right?
yeah, most of which Patriot Act. If there's a second thing we need to do besides get rid of the machines, it's repeal the Patriot Act. That needs to happen immediately.
Damn.
Immediately. And you'll see right then how many of the current Congress members and U.S. Senate, U.S. senators are in the pocket of the deep state and the security or the military industrial complex. And anybody who doesn't want to repeal the Patriot Act after we entered into it under false pretenses, sort of a manufactured war that we didn't need to be in, which the Iraq and Afghanistan war were both wars we didn't need to be in. And they were the predicate for the Patriot Act. Anybody who doesn't want to repeal the Patriot Act is either one, you're a cuck, right? You don't understand the value of citizenship. You want to trade your freedom for security, which makes you a coward, or you're in the pockets of Lockheed Martin and whoever else is selling tickets.
You think Trump's made any progress against the deep state so far?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's no question. Donald Trump's, and I got my Trump 2028 hat on, and people are like, "Whoa, 2028? You don't believe in democracy?" It's like, well, never trust the French. I think Frenchie's wife may or may not be, but very likely is a man. So you can never trust the French globalist elite. I'm talking about Macron.
Yep, of
The
course.
whole situation with his wife, and that's an interesting.
Shout out to
one,
Candace for exposing that.
well, yeah, that was a shocker, and it's a shocker to see how people have responded. It's a shocker to see that people don't really want to look into the details. When I actually looked at the details, I'm like, it is strange that they're suing for cyberbullying and not defamation of character, not lying. That's weird.
Yeah.
But a lot of it's shocking to see how people respond. It doesn't shock me that these people would lie. And again, I've been behind the curtain with a lot of the most powerful people in the world, so I kind of know that they do think people are stupid and they can get away with anything, especially the more money they have. And we've kind of allowed that, right? We've allowed lawyers and attorneys in the legal system and lawfare to be purchased for hire. I mean, you know what I mean? So
Yep.
people, the more money you have, the more likely you are able to get away with things, which is just an upside down problem that we gotta try and solve. But the reason I brought up the French is because there are 4. I wrote in one of my Substack articles. There are 4 heresies of the West, and the first one was the scientific method, right? Which is like secularism, and that the scientific method is going to solve all of humanity's problems. The next one was democracy, actually, and democracy was greatly pushed forward by the French. I mean, it's not just the French, but the French really had a huge hand in the advent of modern day democracy, democratic government. And then you got computer technology, and the fourth and final one is going to be artificial intelligence. And when I say they're heresies of the West, I mean that the West, the Judeo-Christian West, is supposed to be this value system that places an emphasis on a creator and human rights and God and a greater good and so on and so forth. But along the way, all 4 of these things were supposed to make us better, and they did give us some perceived benefit, but ultimately they have caused a lot of problems that we don't acknowledge, like democracy, for example. The word democracy has become a sort of red herring, a distraction really, but a red herring in political conversations. Like when they say democracy, they don't mean a government for us, by us, and of us. They mean democratic institutions. They mean the democratic institutions that were erected after World War II can't be threatened, or else democracy itself no longer exists. And that just makes them institutionalists. That's just their way to shield and cover for the corruption of the institutions. That's why, and I know this guy personally because I was on the Patrick Bet David podcast. Yeah. What's his co-host name?
Adam Sosnick.
Adam, yeah, Adam. It's a perfect example. And he basically spells it out without saying it. He goes, well, are you really willing to just, turn over the apple cart for this one satanic pedophile problem or situation or scandal, if it means that the entire government, that the entire thing kind of cracks and crumbles? And so that becomes the scapegoat and justification to perpetuate the corruption. And I don't really understand how he doesn't see that, but I do, and I think a lot of people do now. So, we got some serious work to do.
Absolutely. Well, Royce, it's been awesome, man. I can't wait to see you in Vegas. How can people support you and find your podcast and everything?
RoyceWhite.us. That's my campaign website for running for U.S. Senate here in the state of Minnesota. Again, every U.S. Senate race is a national race. All 100 senators represent your interest when it comes to legislation. And obviously, I got podcasts. Please Call Me Crazy. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'm probably one of the more shadow banned channels. Hope maybe you can help give me some pointers on how to deal with that. I had Alex Jones on my podcast way too early.
I'll do it.
I got that video, and then I said, Russia is a scam, and so that probably didn't help either. But so please call me crazy. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I usually have my show. And on Saturday mornings, I'm on Real America's Voice. You can follow me on all social media: X, Getter, Truth Social, Facebook, and whatnot. So I'm pretty much everywhere.
Awesome. Check him out, guys. Next time you see him, he might be debating someone. So stay tuned for that too. Peace.
Thanks, man.
I hope you guys are enjoying the show. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps the show a lot with the algorithm. Thank you.